Auditory Pathway, and Language. All the buttons in this video have been disabled. The first part of this video will be focusing on the auditory pathway, and the second part will be dealing with language, talking about the language centers and then disorders related to strokes that impact the language centers. In this overview of the auditory pathway, starting with the organ of Corti in the inner ear, sound is transmitted along the vestibulocochlear nerve and enters the pons pedal junction and ultimately projecting bilaterally with preferential termination in the contralateral cerebral cortex. 4 neurons are represented in this pathway, with a synapse in the cochlear nuclei, inferior cochlea nucleus, medial geniculate nucleus of the thalamus, and finally termination in the primary auditory cortex, area 41 of Broca. In this image, 2 neurons of the auditory pathway are depicted. The bipolar neuron 1 projects from the organ of Corti along the vestibulocochlear nerve to synapse on the cell bodies of neuron 2 in the cochlear nuclei. Neuron 2 axons ascend bilaterally, but with a majority decussating in the trapezoid body. The axons of the auditory pathway that project bilaterally will ascend in the lateral lemnisci. In this image, neuron 2 axons in the lateral lemnisci synapse on cell bodies of neuron 3 located in the inferior cochlea nuclei of the caudal midbrain. Axons of neuron 3 then ascend through the brachium of the inferior colliculus. Axons of neuron 3 project through the brachium of the inferior colliculus to synapse on cell bodies of neuron 4 located in the medial geniculate nucleus of the thalamus, which is here visualized as its surface feature, the medial geniculate body. In this image, we follow the axons on neuron 3 through the brachium of the inferior colliculus and synapsing on the cell bodies of neuron 4 in the medial geniculate nucleus of the thalamus. Axons of neuron 4 project through the posterior limb of the internal capsule to terminate upon the primary auditory cortex that is located in the transverse temporal gyrus, area 41 of Broca, within the depths of the lateral fissure. This and the next slide illustrates the primary auditory cortex. Part of the frontal and parietal lobes were removed, exposing this auditory cortical area deep in the lateral fissure, as well as exposing the primitive insular cortex, sometimes called the 5th lobe of the brain. In this view from above, we get an extant view of the primary cortical area, the transverse temporal gyrus, and also, again, the view of the insula or insular cortex. The following section will be devoted to language centers of the brain and lesions of the same. The centers for language are primarily found in the left cerebral hemisphere, with 95% of the individuals being right-handed and 70% being left-handed. They consist of a receptive center for the comprehension of spoken and written language. This is known as Wernicke's area, and it's located in the superior temporal and supramarginal gyrus region. The second area is an expressive motor area for spoken language. This is Broca's area, and it is located in the inferior frontal gyrus. Another area involved in language is the angular gyrus. This plays a larger role for the expression through written language. Wernicke's and Broca's areas are linked together by a superior longitudinal fasciculus. This allows us to accurately respond to words that are spoken to us. This special dissection allows you to visualize this band of fibers, the superior longitudinal fasciculus or auricular fasciculus, that links the Wernicke's area with Broca's area. The right hemisphere does play a role in language. It's important in giving us quality to our spoken language. Strokes involving the language centers result in difficulty understanding the spoken word or speaking the spoken word. These conditions are called receptive or expressive aphasia, respectively. The darkly shaded area represents the site of the collective results of patients diagnosed to have Wernicke's aphasia, also known as receptive, sensory, or fluent aphasia. Patients with Wernicke's aphasia have difficulty understanding things that are said to them, but they respond fluently, but in doing so, they will substitute words for the correct word, they may create new words or meaningless words, and have phrases that have little or no meaning, known as jargon aphasia. The next slide contains a video of a patient with Wernicke's aphasia. Unfortunately, it is not operable in this auditory pathway video. I highly recommend that you copy the link at the bottom of the page and insert it into your browser so you may view it there. The darkly shaded area represents the site of collective results of patients diagnosed to have Broca's aphasia. The next slide is a patient who has Broca's aphasia. Unfortunately, it is not operable in this auditory pathway video, and I highly recommend to copy the link at the bottom of the page and insert that into your browser so you can view this patient's video.